So we're going to the exegetical study of Yachazaq'al or Ezekiel chapter 4. So far we did chapter 1, 2, and 3. And I'm sure we all received insight or more detail into this chapter that we have probably never done before. For me, so far, it's indeed eye opener for me and knowledge gain that I can use during my walk with Yahuwah. So, Yachazaq'al or Ezekiel chapter 4 contains a prophetic and symbolic message delivered by the prophet Ezekiel. So in this chapter, Yahuwah instructs Yachazaq'al or Ezekiel to use dramatic imagery to depict the coming siege of Jerusalem, or some may know as Jerusalem, and the consequences of Israel's disobedience. Now, a Hebraic examination of this chapter involves looking at its language, symbolism, cultural context, and relevant scriptures.
Right, so we'll ask someone to read verses 1 to 3 of Yachazaq'al or Yachazaq'al, Yachazaq'al chapter 4.
And you, son of man, take a clay tablet, and you shall lay it before you, and shall inscribe on it a city, Jerusalem, and shall lay siege against it, and build a siege wall against it, and heap up a mound against it, and make camps against it, and place battering rams against it all around. Then take an iron plate, and put it as an iron wall between you and the city. And you shall turn your face against it, and it shall be besieged, and you shall lay siege against it. It is a sign to the house of Israel.
Torah. So Yakhazaq'al is commanded to take a clay tablet. We attempted to illustrate that in the first slide. So he's commanded to take a clay tablet and portray the city of Jerusalem or Yerushalayim on it. He's then to lay siege to it by building siege works. So battering rams and camps against it. So he's depicting using what some would call props, but he's using physical, visual aids to bring about the realities of the siege that is coming against the people of the Most High for their disobedience. A metal plate is to be placed between him and the city to signify separation between Yahuwah and his people because of their wrongs. What's the symbolism? The clay tablet or brick represents Jerusalem, while the siege works and battering rams represent the invasion of the Babylonians. And of course, we can look at Bath Malachim or 2 Kings 25 verses 1 to 2, if someone is able to find that. Whilst that is being found, the iron plate signifies an unyielding barrier between Yahuwah and his people, emphasizing the consequences of their rebellion. And we'll also look at Yeshayahu, or Isaiah 59, verse 2. Has anyone found Second Malachim, or what some know as Second Kings? And thereafter Yeshayahu 59, verse 2, or Isaiah 59, verse 2.
And it came to be in the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, on the 10th of the month, that Nebuchadnezzar, sovereign of Babel, and all his army came against Jerusalem and encamped against it. And they built a siege wall against it all around. And the city was besieged until the 11th year of sovereign Zidkiyahu.
So we see evidence there of the siege of Babel, or Babylon, as some know it. Yeshayahu 59, verse 2.
Your wickednesses have separated you from your Elohim, or your Chaim has hidden his face from you, from hearing.
Tuda. So the consequences of their rebellion, separation from the Most High Yahuwah. None of us want to be separated from Yahuwah. Because to be separated means danger. Means we're not protected. The cultural context, so in the ancient Near East, clay tablets were used to record messages. And so the use of clay tablets as a visual aid would have been understood by those who were seeing this act or this demonstration by Yakhazaq'al as a divine warning.
So, looking at verse 1, a little bit more detail. Son of man, or Ban Adam. So this emphasizes Yakhazaq'al humanity and humility in contrast to Yahuwah's divine authority. Now, clay tablet. Now, in the ancient Near East, clay tablets were often used to record legal or historical matters. The use of the tablet as a symbol highlights Yahuwah's right ruling and decree against Jerusalem. Now, join Jerusalem. Now, this act is symbolic and prophetic. In the Greek tradition, visual representation were often used as a teaching tools. Now we can look at Shamut, or Exodus 25, verse 40, and we see this with a representation in that verse. So I'm going to ask someone to read Shamut, or Exodus 25, verse 40.
So see and do according to the pattern which was shown to you on the mountain.
Toda for reading. All right. So looking at verse 2. And he said, and shall lay a siege against it, and build a siege wall against it, and heap up a moat against it, and set camps against it, and place battering rams against it all around. Now we're going to look at the siege works. Now, represents the Babylonians' actual military strategy. Now we're going to look at Malachim that we read earlier. We read Malachim 25, verse 1 and 2. We're going to look back at verse 25, which is 2nd Malachim 25, verse 1, or 2nd Kings 25, verse 1. Anyone want to read it?
You want to read again?
Yeah, just for emphasis, just to point out that that a siege wall was built as a military strategy in by Nebuchadnezzar, the sovereign at the time. Just for emphasis.
Okay. And it came to be in the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, on the 10th of the month, that Nebuchadnezzar, sovereign of Babel, and all his army came against Jerusalem and encamped against it, and they built a siege wall against it all around.
So for reading. So, all right. So symbolic reenactment. Now, the Nabim in Hebraic culture often act out prophecies to make their messages clear, vivid, and unavoidable. Now we're going to take a look at Yeshayahu 20, verse 2 to 4, and Yahu, verse 30, chapter 13, verse 1 to 11. So we're going to connect this scripture to this verse that we're looking at. So I'm going to ask someone to get Yeshayahu 20, verse 2 to 4, and someone else to get Yahu 13, verse 1 to 11.
At that same time, Yahweh spoke by means of Yeshayahu, ban of Akhad, saying, go and remove the sackcloth from your body, and take your sandals off your feet. And he did so, walking naked and barefoot. And Yahweh said, as my servant Yeshayahu has walked naked and barefoot 3 years for a sign and a wonder against Mitzrayim and Cush, so does the Malik of Ashur lead away the captives of Mitzrayim and the exiles of Cush, young and old, naked and barefoot, with their buttocks uncovered, the shame of Mitzrayim.
So now, for reading, Yahu 13, verse 1 to 11. 1 to 11. Chapter 13, verse 1 to 11.
Thus Yahuwah said to me, go and get yourself a linen girdle and put it on your loins, but do not put it in water. So I bought a girdle according to the word of Yahuwah and put it on my loins. And the word of Yahuwah came to me the second time, saying, take the girdle that you have bought, which is on your loins, and arise, go to Parach, and hide it there in a hole in the rock. And I went and hid it by Parach, as Yahuwah commanded me. And it came to be after many days that Yahuwah said to me, arise, Go to Parak and take from there the girdle which I commanded you to hide there. So I went to Parak and dug, and I took the girdle from the place where I had hidden it, and there was the girdle, ruined. It was completely useless. And the word of Yahuwah came to me, saying, Thus says Yahuwah, thus I ruined the pride of Yahudah and the great pride of Yahushalim. This evil people who refuse to hear my words, who walk in the stubbornness of their heart, and walk after other mighty ones to serve them and to bow themselves to them, is like this girdle which is completely useless. For as the girdle clings to the loins of a man, so I have caused all the house of Yisrael and all the house of Yahudah to cling to me, declares Yahuwah, to become mine for a people and for a name and for a praise and for an adorning, but they did not listen.
So you see here the Nabim using visual aid to to make their messages vivid and unavoidable. So covenant curses. Now the seed was a direct fulfillment of Adabarim 28 verse 52, which warned of the adversaries' encampments against disobedient Israel. So someone can read that for us, Adabarim 28 verse 52.
And they
Lord.
shall. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Carlene.
And they shall besiege you at all your gates, till your high and fenced walls, in which you are trusting, come down in all your land. And they shall besiege you at all your gates, in all your land, which Yahweh your Elohah has given you.
For reading. So looking at verse 3. So then take an iron plate and place it as an iron wall between you and the city. And you shall position your face against it, and it shall besiege, and it shall be besieged, and you shall lay siege against it. It is a sign to habit Israel, or the house of Israel. Now we're going to look at the iron plate. Now, likely a flat griddle used in cooking. Now we can look at Leviticus Ukara 2 verse 5, where someone can read that for us.
But if your offering is a grain offering on the griddle, it is of fine flour unleavened mixed with oil.
Shut up for reading. So here we see it symbolizes the unbreakable barrier between Yahuwah and his people due to their wrongs. Now we're going to read.
Of course, we read it in Yeshayahu 59 verse 2 earlier.
Hold on. So, prophetic sign. The use of physical objects as signs or symbol is consistent with Hebraic prophetic traditions. Now, Shamut 4 verses 1 to 9. I'm going to ask someone to read that first.
And Moshe answered and said, And if they do not believe me, nor listen to my voice, and say, Yahuwah has not appeared to you. And Yahuwah said to him, What is it that in your hand? And he said, a rod. And he said, throw it on the ground. So he threw it on the ground, and it became a serpent. And Moshe fled from it. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, reach out your hand and catch it by the tail. So he reached out his hand and seized it, and it became a rod in his hand. So that they believed that Yahuwah Elohim of their fathers, the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Yishak, the Elohim of Yaakov, has appeared to you. And Yahuwah said to him again, now put your hand in your bosom. And he put his hand in his bosom. And when he took it out, and see, his hand was leprous, like snow. And he said, put your hand in your bosom again. So he put his hand in his bosom again, and drew it out of his bosom, and see, it was restored like his other flesh. And it shall be, if they do not believe you, nor listen to the voice of the first sign, they shall believe the voice of the latter sign. And it shall be, if they do not believe even these two signs, or listen to your voice, that you shall take water from the river and pour it on the dry land, and the water which you take from the river shall become blood on the dry land.
So here we see Musha using physical object as sign or symbol.
To really communicate Yahuwah's word. So it was common then, and it still is now, where sometimes physical or earthly representations, that which the listening audience would mean or understand, are used. Yahusha used those as well, earthly examples to explain spiritual occurrences or meanings. So it's common in Hebraic tradition to use that.
So turning the face, a sign of right ruling or judgment, as Yahuwah hide his face from those under wrath. Now we're going to read Adabarim, or Deuteronomy 31, verse 17. Can I ask someone to read it for us?
Then my displeasure shall burn against him in that you mean, and I shall forsake them, and hide my face from them, and they shall be consumed, and many evils and distresses shall come upon them. And it shall be said in that you mean, is it not because of your Elohim? Is not in our midst that these evils have come upon us?
So that for reading, and every time Yahuwah is not pleased, or every time he shall do something that goes against Yahuwah, he always tend to turn his face away from them. He always hide his face from Israel whenever he's not pleased with what they're living or their lifestyle.
And turning his face is not a literal human head or face, but really his favor is no longer with them. His mercy is no longer with them. His loving kindness and his presence is no longer with them. So when he hides his face, it means he hides all of that away from them. And once his presence, his favor, his loving kindness, his mercy is not extended, is no longer with them, that spells trouble. It means misery. It means the ability of the adversary to overtake, as we're reading now in Yachazaq'al chapter 4, to bring siege against Yahuwah's people.
Wow.
So scriptural witnessing. witness. So we can look at Jeremiah 52, verse 4 to 6. And also we're gonna ask someone to look for Adabarim 28, verse 49 to 52.
I got Hadabarim 28, 49 through 52. If that's okay.
Okay, 52, 4 to 6.
4 to 6.
And it came to be in the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, on the 10th of the month, that Nebuchadnezzar, sovereign of Babel, and all his army came against Jerusalem and encamped against it. And they built a siege wall against it all around. And the city was under siege until the 11th year of sovereign Yahu. On the 9th of the 4th month, the scarcity of food was so severe in the city that there was no food for the people of the land.
Fine. So this prophecy aligns with Jeremiah's or Jeremiah's account of the siege. Adabarim?
Yahuwah brings a nation against you from afar, from the end of the Arats, as swift as the eagle's flies, a nation whose language you shall not understand, a fierce-looking nation, which shows no regard for the elderly, nor show favor to the young. And they shall eat the fruit of your livestock and the fruit of your land until you are destroyed. They leave you no grain, nor new wine, nor oil, nor the increase of your cattle, or the offspring of your flocks, until they have destroyed you. And they shall besiege you at all your gates, till your high and fenced walls, in which you are trusting, come down in all your land. And they shall besiege you at all your gates, in all your land, which Yahuwah your Allah has given you.
So then for reading. So we realize the curses for the covenant, disobedience include siege and destruction.
None of us want to experience that anymore because there's nothing new. It's like a recurring decimal. Every time his people as a nation are disobedient, we see where other nations take over our possessions. We see where there is an increase in illnesses, there's an increase in poverty or scarcity of necessities, food supply, fresh water supply, even land to do anything. We see where it happens over and over. Now, whilst not in all cases, an illness, for example, there were Nabim who did experience illnesses, and that was not tied to disobedience. However, there are instances where the nation or the community of Israel would experience widespread illnesses. For example, we see where amongst our people there's the high level of diabetes, arthritis, hypertension, various cancers. There's just this increase of those particular diseases that have been rampant amongst our people. The loss of hair for women, we see, I think they call it alopecia. I don't know. I don't remember the word.
Yeah,
But
that's correct.
Correct.
Toda. So there's the increase of that amongst our people. There are some common illnesses that are really rampant, and we see them predominantly amongst our people, specifically the native borns who have been scattered of Yehuda. We see this sort of thing where a lot of our people don't own anything. It's mostly renting, working for others, working long hours with little pay. We're seeing this as a recurring theme, a recurring decimal. It happens each time the nation, and I keep emphasizing the nation because sometimes even though we may individually do some things, there are some things which are required of the nation. And so by virtue of the nation being disobedient, it falls on each of us. And this is why we do not only pray for ourselves, nor our families, we also pray for the nation. For the nation.
Khan, Amar.
So we're going to ask someone to read verses 4 to 8 before we elaborate. Verses
And
4.
lie on your left side, and you shall put the wickedness of the house of Israel on it. As many days as you lie on it, you shall bear their wickedness. For I myself have laid on you the years of their wickedness. According to the number of the Yumim, 390 Yumim, and you shall bear the wickedness of the house of Israel. And when you have completed them, you shall lie again on your right side, and shall bear the wickedness of the house of Yehuda, 40 Yumim, a Yumim for a year. I have laid on you a Yumim for a year. Then you shall turn your face towards the siege of Jerusalem with your arm bared, and you shall nabah against it. And see, I shall put cords on you so that you do not turn from one side to another until you have completed the Yumim of your siege.
Toda. So we see a lot of dramatization taking place here. Lying on his side, Yachazaq'al is told to lie on his left side for 390 Yumim, and this likely represents the years of Yisrael's wrongdoings. And by this time, what we will see is the division of right ruling for Yisrael versus Yehuda. For those who would have been reading, you would recall the division following Shalama or sovereign Solomon's time or reign. The reign of the nation of Israel was divided. And so you had the northern reign with 10 tribes and the southern reign with 2 tribes, Yehuda and Benjamin, or Benjamin. So we see where he is told to lay on his left side for 390 Yumim for the northern reign's wrongdoings, and on his right side for 40 Yumim representing the southern reign, or Yehuda's wrongdoings. And the reign of Yehuda consists of 2 tribes. I think sometimes we tend to get that mixed up. And so when people say, what tribe are you from? Everyone will say Yehuda. But what we're really saying is they're from the reign of Yehuda. The reign of Yehuda or what some know as kingdom, consisted of 2 tribes, Yehuda and Benjamin. And of course, it was the reign of Yehuda which was scattered, for example, in the various transatlantic and so on trades. So there were 2 tribes in that particular event. But sometimes our people get the reigns mixed up with the tribes. So it's important to ensure that separation or distinction is made. Yachazaq'al is bound with cords to ensure he remains in position. Now let's look at the numerical significance. We spoke of the 390 Yumim likely representing the years. Remember, Yahuwah says a yom for a year. So the 390 Yumim likely represents 390 years of Yisrael's rebellion, possibly from the division of the reign of Shalom, after Shalama would have ceased reigning, possibly from that time, following his reign until the time of this scripture, or the writing of Yakhazaq'al. And then 40 Yumim symbolizing Yehuda's rebellion, possibly paralleling the 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. Someone please read for us Bamadabar, or Numbers 14, verses 33 to 34.
And your banim shall be wanderers in the wilderness 40 years, and shall bear your horns until your carcasses are consumed in the wilderness, according to the number of the Yumim, in which you spied out the land, 40 Yumim, a yum for a year, a yum for a year, you are to bear your wickednesses 40 years, and you shall know my breaking off.
So we see the correlation there, or the possible parallel there. We talk about the binding with cords, and this illustrates Yakhazaq'al's submission to Yahuwah's will and the inescapable right ruling awaiting the people. So the binding cords show that there's nowhere to run. There was nowhere to run for our ancestors. They could not escape Yahuwah's right ruling. Most people know it as judgment, but it's really right ruling. And right ruling, again, speaks to the consequences. So you talk about a constitution, you talk about the commands, what you must do or you do not do. You talk about the statutes, which looks at how, when, where, who, why, and all of that. And then you have the right rulings, or what some know as judgments, which look at the consequences of breaking the commands and statutes. And it also looks at your rights and responsibilities. So the consequences of wrongs was inescapable. Whatever is done, whether right or wrong, has consequences or rewards. And because Yahuwah is right, he will ensure that we are rewarded for what we do right, or we receive the consequences in some form or another. Even if it is lightly done when we cry out for his mercy, he may lift his hand and give a lesser penalty. It's like going to court, and after pleading or begging, the what they call the honorable judge or the Shabath may decide to give a lesser charge or lesser penalty. So though we may get a lesser penalty when we cry out, there are still consequences for all actions. Khan? So verse 4, then lie on your side. Take upon yourself the crimes of Yisrael, and you must bear their crimes for the number of Yumim you lie on your side. So even though he's laying down for Yumim or days, it really represents years of what is about to take place. Lying on the left side represents the northern reign of Yisrael, involving the 10 tribes and how they would have played the harlot against the Most High, how they would have rebelled against the Most High. Traditionally associated with the left or north. Usually east was the primary orientation. East meant forward, but in this case we see, and I'm going to illustrate what I'm saying for those who are more visual learners. You see the illustration again. We're going to show that shortly. So north was really left and south was right. And that doesn't make sense in some people's minds because they're not seeing it. They're mostly seeing east and west, but we're going to show what we mean. Bearing the crimes of the people or taking on the wrongs of the people reflects the Hebraic concept of communal accountability. Remember, we spoke about some things being individual, but as a nation, there are some things we face as a nation. So bearing these wrongs upon himself was in essence showing a level of communal accountability where each of us is responsible for each other, because we are not individually separated. We are a community, or you may hear communitas. And so it is important for there to be communal accountability and communal intercession, interceding for each other, interceding for the nation, praying for each other. We see two scriptures here, but for emphasis, we want to follow and flow as we are going through the lesson. So someone, Uikara 16:22, and also Yeshayahu 53:12.
And the goat shall bear on itself all their wickedness to a land cut off. Thus he shall send a goat away into the wilderness.
So you see the bearing of the wrongs being placed upon the goat. So in essence, Yachazaq'al taking upon himself the wrongs of the people is symbolic of the act where the Kahan or Kahanim or the priest would place the wrongs of the people upon, or Samach, upon the goat. Yeshayahu 53:12.
Therefore I give him a portion among the great, so what he divides spoils with the strong, because he poured out his being unto Mut, or he was counted with the transgressors, or he bore the hata of many, or made intercession for the transgressors.
Toda. So intercession is made for others as well. Now here's the illustration. So we're looking at, what did they call this again? Cardinal points or something like that. But anyways, we see north, south, east, west. East is usually the forward point. So the north representing 10 tribes. South representing the reign of Yehuda with 2 tribes. Are we seeing this on the screen? So east is usually the direction of focus or forward direction, but here we are seeing a change. So one would have expected that he would have laid on his side this way. But when Yahuwah told him, lay on your left side, he was really laying this way. Are we seeing that? So he laid on his left side facing the north, which spoke of the 10 tribes, that's 390 Yumim, that he would have laid on his left side for the north. And left is in contrast to the southern tribes or the southern reign. All right. Verse 5.
So for I myself have laid on you the years of your crookedness, according to the number of the Yomim, 390 Yomim, and you shall bear the crookedness of the house of Israel.
So as we said before, the 390 may represent the total years of the rebellion of the nation after the reign of sovereign Shalama or Solomon. And if you want, you could read through the chapter 12 of Aleph Malachim or First Kings. So we're seeing where 390 could possibly have been what was being referenced from following the time of Shalama until the time of the exile. We hear Yom for Shana, or day for year principle. And this was common in prophetic symbolism. Again, for emphasis and for scriptural witness and making the correlation, we ask persons to read these scriptures. So Numbers or Bamadabar 14:34 and Daniel 9 verses 24 to 27. Numbers 14 verse 34, Bamadabar 14:34.
According to the number of the days in which you spied out the land, 40 days, a day for a year, a day for a year. You are to bear your wickedness 40 years, and you shall know my breaking off.
Todah, Daniel 9, verse 24 to 27. You may find that we repeat some of the scriptures for emphasis. Anyone found Daniel 9, 24 to 27?
"70 weeks are decreed for your people and for your Kadash city, to put an end to the transgression and to seal up sins and to cover wickedness and to bring in everlasting righteousness and to seal up vision and Nabi and to anoint the most Kadash. Know then and understand from the going forth of the command to restore and build Yerushalayim until Mashiach the Prince is 7 weeks and 62 weeks. It shall be built again with streets and a trench, but in times of affliction."
Todah. Oh, sorry.
"And after 62 weeks, Mashiach shall be cut off and have not. And the people of a coming prince shall destroy the city and the Kadash place, and at the end of it is with a flood. Wash and wastes are decreed, and fighting until the end. And he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, and in the middle of the week he shall put an end to slaughtering and meal offering, and the wing of abominations he shall lay waste, even until the complete end, and that which is decreed is poured out on the one who lays waste."
Todah.
So we see the symbolism of Yumim for years. Yumim for years. This is also heavily present in the book of Jubileem or Jubilees, where you may see weeks of years and then you have literal weeks. And so if you are reading that book, you may find that you may hear in the 4th week of the 7th year of the, and so you're talking about the Yom for Shana, the Yom for year principle being used in, which is part of prophetic symbolism. So it's very important to understand the Hebraic context in which numbers are used, in which concepts and principles are expressed. The use of visual aids, the use of actions that are meant to hammer home the message that the Most High is communicating to his people.
And verse 6, and when you have completed them, you shall lie again on your right side, and shall bear the crookedness of the house of Yehudah 40 yomim, a yom for a shana, a year. I have laid on you a yom for a shana, a year. So right side represent the southern reign of Yehudah, which remained longer in the covenant, but also fell into rebellion.
And as we said earlier, 40 Yomim could or may have symbolized the 40 years that Yahuwah said they would have suffered the consequences for their rebellion whilst they were in the wilderness. Or Yehuda's final years of disobedience leading up to exile. So even as we demonstrated or illustrated rather earlier, we remember what the directions looked like. And so earlier, as we said, east was usually the point of looking forward. But in this case, when he lies on his right side, on his left side, he's facing the north. And then now he's told to lay on his right side. So he's now facing south for 40 Yumim. Are we seeing that? And this, of course, is looking at the 40 Yumim, which represents 40 years of right ruling against Yehudah for its rebellion against the Most High. So Yehudah and Benjamin or Benjamin would have faced those consequences.
So, verse 7, then you shall position your face toward the siege of Jerusalem, with your arm beard, and you shall prophesy against it. So, beard, arm, a Brit idiom for strength and divine action. Now we're going to connect this with Shamut 6, verse 6, and Yeshayahu 52, verse 10. So we're going to ask someone to read it for us.
Say, therefore, to the children of Israel, I am Yahuwah, and I shall bring you out from under the burdens of the Mitzrites, and shall deliver you from their enslaving, and shall redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great judgments.
Yeshayahu 52, verse 10.
Yahuwah shall lay bare his Kadash arms in the eyes of all the nations, and all the ends of the Arats shall see the deliverance of our Aluah.
So bare arm. Yachazaq'al action symbolizes Yahuwah's active right ruling.
So his hands being bare, in essence, is saying you're getting the raw consequences. There is nothing covered. There is nothing watered down. You are going to get the full strength of the right ruling of the Most High. Are we understanding?
So turning the face reinforces the inevitability of right ruling.
So they can't escape it. It's going to happen.
So verse 8, and see, I shall put cords on you so that you do not turn from one side to another until you have completed the yomim of your siege. Now, tying up reflects divine restraint on Yachazaq'al, symbolizing the inescapable right ruling on Israel and Yehuda. I don't know about anyone. Have you ever been tied up before?
Not me.
Why friends one? Why being young as a child, anything?
That sounds more like stuff for banim, for boys.
Well,
girls don't go around tying up each other.
I have experienced it. So
you were a boy.
I am a boy. I'm a man now.
So you were a boy at that time. So you boys used to play rough.
So I understand what he was feeling in terms of.
They tied you up?
Yeah, it was just for fun.
Did you tie up anyone else? No.
I would not say on it.
So you were always the one being tied up? You should probably be called Yakhazaq'al.
But I know the restraint that you will feel from being tied up, not able to be moved any at all, just stuck in one place. So ropes may also symbolize the spiritual bondage of the people due to wrongdoings. Now we're going to witness this with Lamentation 1, verse 14.
Noon, the yoke of my transgressions has been bound by his hand, woven together and thrust upon my neck. He has made my strength stumble. Yahuwah has given me into hands, which I am unable to withstand.
So the reading.
So we saw there an example of being restrained, and usually with, even physically, if we look at it in our time now, literal space, those who do wrongs are restrained. They're restrained with handcuffs. They're restrained with some sort of mechanism that prevents you escaping. And then they're placed behind bars. In times past, restraint would not have been done with handcuffs, but it was common for cords or ropes to be used to restrain wrongdoers. And so spiritually, this also meant bondage, because you would not have been free to worship and to call on Yahuwah, because it meant there needed to be true shub, or turning away from wrongs, and tashuba, turning back to the covenant. Outside of that, you're really not free, but bound. So you become enslaved to fear. You become, and this is why you have the song, I'm no longer a slave to fear. So you become, and that was really from the scripture that Paul or Shaul wrote. So you are bound to worldly pleasures. You are bound to, outside of Yahuwah, that is. In essence, you are in bondage. You're really not free. You're not experiencing true delight and pleasure. You notice people who are outside of Yahuwah, they try to use money to bring that sort of freedom. But they're still miserable. A lot of them are still miserable because you cannot buy this sort of thing. The things in the physical cannot be used to undo that which is done in the spirit, or the ruach. And so whatever we do must unto Yahuwah is done in ruach uamat, spirit and truth. So we cannot buy our way out of it. We cannot bribe our way out of it. Once there is something wrong with the relationship, something that has caused us to be separated, like that pan that is used to separate the people of the Most High from the Most High. If we do not quickly, like Dawood, if we do not quickly return, at some point we're going to find ourselves tied up in some messy situations. Yada Yahuwah.
Yada Yahuwah. So we're going to take a break. All right, so we're going to take a 20 minutes break and then be back to continue on chapter 4 of Yachazaq'al. So go to the restroom, get something to eat, and be back in 20 minutes. Shabbat Shalom, and welcome back, Ms. Parker.
Is everyone back with us?
All right. So we're going to continue from verse 9 to the end, which is verse 17. So we're going to ask someone to read for us verse 9 to 17.
All right, I haven't read in a little while. So, and take wheat and barley and beans and lentils and millet and spelt, and you shall put them into one vessel, and make bread of them. You shall eat it, as many yumim as you lie on your side, 390 yumim. And your food which you eat is by weight, 20 shekels a yum. to be eaten from time to time, and drink water by measure, 1/6 of a hin, to be drunk from time to time, and eat it as a barley cake, and bake it before their eyes on human dung. And Yahuwah said, even so the children of Israel shall eat their defiled bread among the other nations, the Goyim, to whom I drive them. Then I said, sovereign Yahuwah, see, I have never defiled myself from my youth till now. I have never eaten what died of itself, or was torn by beasts, or has unclean meat ever come into my mouth. And he said to me, see, I'm giving you the dung of cattle instead of human dung, and you shall prepare your bread over it. And he said to me, Ban Adam, or son of man, see, I am going to cut off the supply of bread in Jerusalem, and they shall eat bread by weight, and with fear, and drink water by measure, and with dread. Verse 17, and asked, so that they lack bread and water, and shall be appalled with one another, and be consumed in their wickedness, or in their crookedness.
Khan.
So Yachazaq'al is instructed to eat a mixture of grains, baked first. He was told, bake it over human excrement. Of course, he would have cried out, so Yahuwah says, okay. The fuel you will use instead is cow dung. And this symbolizes the scarcity and defilement of food during the siege. Mixed grains reflect scarcity of resources during a siege. Mixed grains in those times was considered as poor man's food, because in those times wheat was really the primary grain used to bake, and was seen as that which those who were well off would use to bake bread. So for you to be using a little of each grain to try to make bread showed there was scarcity. Baking on dung, this act symbolizes the defilement Israel would experience in exile. Someone can read Akhad 28, verses 64 to 68 for us. And then, of course, we also have further down Lamentations, or Aika 4, verses 4 to 10, and Yahu 24, verses 9 to 10. And these will, of course, be correlated with the verses which I read just now for Yachazaq'al. Anyone found Akhad 28, verses 64 to 68?
And Yahuwah shall scatter you among all peoples, from one end of the Arats to the other, and there you shall serve other mighty ones, which neither you nor your fathers have known, wood and stone. And among those nations you are to find no rest, nor having a resting place for the sole of your foot. But there Yahuwah shall give you a trembling heart, and failing eyes, and sorrow of being. And your life shall be hanging in suspense before you, and you shall fear day and night, and not be certain of your life. In the morning you say, oh, that it were evening, and at evening you say, oh, that it were morning, because of the fear of your heart, with which you fear, and because of the sight which your eyes see. And Yahuwah shall bring you back to Matsurim in ships, by way of which I said to you, you are never to see it again. And there you shall be sold to your enemies as male and female slaves, but no one to buy.
Toda.
Toda.
So we're seeing the use again of the symbolism of being defiled, being used even among the kalaluth, or the curses, which Yisrael was facing and still is for some people who remain asleep in their wrong. So we're seeing the use of these various allegorical messages to describe the state in which Yisrael would have found themselves because of wrongs. Cultural practices in ancient Yisrael, baking over dung was not typical for Yahuwah's people, but was common in desperate situations. Whenever peoples of that time would run out of fuel to cook, you find in ancient times, though again it wasn't common for our people, but other peoples of those ancient times, and some still do now in parts of Al-Kabulan, use cow dung because it would have been digested grass. They would use it as fuel for fire to cook. But again, it wasn't typical for our people. That meant the situation was dire. It was very desperate when you had to do that, especially as, a child of the Most High. We're going to see, as we further exegete each verse, the presence of famine and scarcity and hardship. But let's look at these scriptures, which would sort of form scriptural correlations or scriptural witnesses of other instances of famine in a siege. So has anyone found Aika 4 verses 4 to 10?
He shall bring the bull to the door of the tent of appointment before Yahuwah. Uah shall lay his hand on the bull's head. Uah slaughter the bull before Yahuwah. Well, the anointed Khan shall take some of the bull's dung. Uah bring it to the tent of appointment. Uah the Khan shall dip his finger in the dam. Uah sprinkle some of the dam 7 times before Yahuwah in front of the veil of the Kadash place. Uah the Khan shall put some of the dam on the horns of the altar of sweet incense before Yahuwah, that is in the tent of appointment. Will pour all the dam of the bull at the base of the altar of the burnt offering, that is at the door of the tent of appointment. Then he takes all the fat of the bull as the Akhad offering, the fat that covers the entrails, or all the fat that is on the entrails, or the 2 kidneys, or the fat that is on them by the loins, or the appendage on the liver that he removed with the kidneys, as it was taken from the bull of Shalom offering, or the Khan shall burn them on the altar of the burnt offering.
Toda.
Yaramyahu 24 verses 9 to 10.
And I shall make them a horror to all the reigns of the Earth for evil, to be a reproach and a byword, a mockery and a curse in all the places to which I drive it. And I shall send the sword, the scarcity of food, and the pestilence among them, till they are consumed from the land that I gave to them and their Abbas.
Toda. All right, so we're seeing again the recurrence of the right ruling of the Most High Yahuwah against the people of Yisrael for the wrongs they would have committed. So let's go, let's delve a little more. We may delve a little deeper into verse 9, but let's continue now with the exegesis of the verses.
Now verse 9. So mix grains indicates scarcity and poverty. Now, in a Greek tradition, mixing grains for bread was associated, as Morris said earlier, with desperate times. The symbol of siege reflects the rationing and poor quality of food during Jerusalem siege.
And we
We saw that in Lamentation 4, verse 9 to 10. We just read. Now, we're going to look at several key ways details symbolizing poverty and hardship. Now, mixed grain represent scarcity. Now, in ancient Israel, wheat was the primary grain used for bread by those with adequate resources. Barley, while still common, was considered inferior and often associated with the poor or animals. Now we're going to ask someone to read Judges, Shaphatim 7, verse 13, and Yahukanan 6, verse 9.
And Gideon came, and see, a man was relating a dream to his companion, and said, See, I had a dream, and see, a loaf of barley bread tumbled into the camp of Mayan, and it came to a tent and smote it so that it fell and overturned, and the tent fell down.
Hold up for reading.
Yahukanan 6, verse 9.
Here is a boy who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what are these for so many?
Hold up for reading.
So we see barley was not seen as the primary grain if you wanted to make really wonderful bread. It was secondary, or considered at that time as secondary to wheat. So whilst it was used, if you had sufficient wheat, you at that time would choose the wheat over the barley. Are you with me?
So millet and spelt were even lower quality grains and were typically used in times of scarcity or famine. Now, mixing grains in bread making imply a lack of sufficient wheat or barley to make a proper loaf, forcing reliance on whatever was available. Number 2, the historical and cultural context. Now, in times of siege or famine, such as the one in Yachazaq'al that we're looking at now, was symbolically represented in Yachazaq'al 4, verse 16 to 17, where people restored to using lesser or alternative grains. Now, archaeological findings in the ancient Near East show that mixed grain bread was not a luxury, but a survival tactic during food shortages. Number 3, bread as a symbol of deprivation. The bread was a staple of Kai and our life, and the quality of bread reflects one's economic status. Now, fine wheat bread symbolizes wealth. Someone can read for us Bereshit or Genesis 18, verse 6.
So Abraham ran into the tent to Sarah and said, "Hurry, make ready 3 seahs of fine flour, knead it and make cakes."
Toda, for reading. So, coarse barley or mixed grain bread reflect poverty and desperation. The Yachazaq'al diet of mixed grain underscored the dire condition Israel would face during the Babylonian siege, which was read earlier from 2nd Malachi 25, verse 1 to 3. Continue. So number 4, scriptural parallels. So Ukara or Leviticus 26, verse 27. 26, verse 26. And Adabarim 28, verse 48, we know describe famine as a consequences of disobedience. So consequence of disobedience to Yahuwah, where people will struggle for basic sustenance. Now Yachazaq'al bread illustrate this curse, pointing to physical and spiritual impoverishment of the people.
What does Oikara 26:26 say? Can someone find that for us?
When I have cut off your supply of bread, 10 women shall bake your bread in one oven, and they shall bring back to you your bread by weight, and you shall eat and not be satisfied.
Toda. So we see the scriptural parallel there. And we've been reading Hadabarim 28. Remind us of verse 48 for someone who found it.
Yahuwah shall smite you with madness and blindness and bewilderment of Labab.
That's
28, verse 48.
Oh, 48. Sorry. You shall serve your enemies whom Yahuwah sends against you, in hunger and in thirst, and in nakedness, and in need of all. And he shall put a yoke of iron on your neck until he has destroyed you.
Toda. And there's also the scriptural parallel even in Chazun. For those who recall the first 4 seals, amongst them is scarcity of food, eating grain by measure. Do we recall that? So what has happened before will happen again. Because of the disobedience of the Most High's people. And that of course, that statement is in Kahalath chapter 1. Kahalath chapter 1, someone can remind me of the verse that speaks of what has happened before will happen again. Someone can remind me what verse that is. But that's that in the Abrith, that is Kabar Hayah, which indicates what has happened before will happen again. Kabar Hayah. Has anyone seen the verse? That's in, I said Kahalath, Ecclesiastes 1. Just need to be reminded of the verse. What has happened before will happen again.
It's
verse
9.
Toda. Verse 9. Read it for us, just to confirm.
Okay. What has been is what shall be. What has been done is what shall be done. And there is none new under the sun.
Toda. So what has happened before will happen again. And the right ruling of the Most High will happen again, as it is happening even now. For a number of those who are really called by Yahuwah's name, who are either asleep or who stubbornly refuse to turn. We see scarcity and lack as a common consequence, or Yahuwah's right ruling on his people. So many of our people can really never have enough. You know, we still have situations where even parents will find themselves not eating so their children can eat. Have you ever heard of those situations? So there's just not enough. But Yahuwah, once we are living according to his word, will cause us to live in abundance. We will always have what we need. We will always have enough once we are in line with his instructions. But rebellion against his word brings lack, brings bondage, brings scarcity, brings fear and terror and dread, always having to look over your head, your back, always fearful that someone else is going to attack. You see it constantly with even the way, unfortunately, some of our native-born Achim and Akutim who have not yet awakened to who they really are, how they are treated. There is what some may call racism or racism, prejudice and all of that. And they're always in fear that someone else is going to attack them and the system will be unfair in how it treats them. And all of this comes as a result of the right ruling of the Most High against the nation.
Yada Yahuwah.
Yahuwah.
So practical significance of the ingredients. The beans and lentils were cheap and often used as substitutes for grains in our times. Further underscores the lack of abundance. Combining these diverse elements to make bread highlights how desperate the situation was, as people scavenged whatever they could find to survive.
And that is still happening now. A lot of people are pretty much trying to make ends meet. In Jamaica, we'd say make ends meet. So they're still trying to scavenge for whatever they can find. In most cases, the cheapest things are not the healthiest. And so people have to resort to low grade flour, which is so heavily processed and bleached. People have to resort to processed grains rather than whole grains. A lot of people now are in some countries don't even have much clean water to drink. Some have to travel for miles to get that. And so that lack and that level of impoverishment is not only a physical thing, but there's also a spiritual lack in the relationship or connection with the covenant relationship. And so it manifests itself physically into consequences. Observe that a lot, and we keep saying this, a lot of what we see in scripture in terms of food, clothing, how houses are built, do we notice it's usually the finest things, the most costly things that are used to make food or described as food, or even costly fabric or materials for what we wear, is the finest of things that the Most High expects his people to consume or to wear, or how we live. Do you recognize that? We were discussing last week that,
Last week into this week.
Shabuah into this
Sure.
Shabuah, how prior to doing that presentation on chicken, we were looking at the birds that would be considered clean, and we're saying, but these things are expensive. Where do we get these things? Partridges and turtle doves, and I mean, these aren't common things you see in the supermarket.
No.
Lamb is not everywhere.
No.
So you're talking about expensive things. Linen is one of the most expensive clothing. I mean, when we go to the stores and we look at clothing, linen is very costly.
Very costly.
And we would love to think everywhere linen is costly. Pure linen, that is. Because some of them are mixed with polyester and other synthetic fibers. But for those that are purely linen, the rate is costly. Wool, pure wool, likewise, is costly. But you find other synthetics and polyester and things are more common and are cheap. Right now, if you check a number of the clothes that we wear are predominantly plastic, polyester. But what Yahuwah instructs his people to consume or to wear, etc., tend to be more costly, and it's not common. That's the next word. It's not common. We don't see these things everywhere. They're in specific places and they're priced at a particular price range. Likewise, we're not called to be common and to have common behaviors. We are royal kahanim, royal priesthood. We're a Kadash people. And so we are called out from common traditions and common behaviors and common things, common food, which is not really food, but common things that people consume. We're not called to have a cheap ruch that simply accepts anything that it gets. Or ruchuth must not be scavengers in nature. So we shouldn't be trying to scrape for every little word that is out there, speaking spiritually. But we should seek the truth in the word of Yahuwah that is sweeter than honey. Remember those descriptions. The rich word of Yahuwah, not simply some regurgitation of someone standing behind a pulpit, but going into the word, pulling it apart, precept upon precept and line upon line, and whatever is not understood, seeking clarity. But it's so important that we get into it for ourselves. Yada Yahuwah.
Yada. Now, verse 10. said, and your food which you eat is by weight, 20 shekels a yom, to be eaten from time to time. Now, 20 shekels, approximately 8 ounces, about 230 grams, or half pound. This small amount of food symbolizes extreme scarcity during the siege, a fulfillment of the covenant kalalhut, or curses. Ulkara 26, verse 26, we read that a while ago.
So can you imagine wanting to eat food and all your household has access to is half a pound of flour?
Not much.
Especially if you have a big.
And it doesn't matter the size of your family, that's all you'll get.
Yeah.
So imagine 8 people in one house.
1 ounce per person.
And all you have is half a pound of flour, or half a pound of rice, or half a pound of whatever. But that's all you have for the entire yum. That's a small amount for an entire yum.
So eating at specific times. So indicates strict rationing, emphasizing the severity of famine conditions. In Abrit thought, eating at specific times implies survival mode, not abundance, which is a stark contrast to the Barakim after covenant, Adabarim 8 verses 9. So we're going to ask someone to read that for us.
A land in that you eat bread without scarcity, and that you do not lack at all. A land whose stones are iron, or out of whose harim you dig copper.
And told them for read it.
So Yahuwah doesn't want us to lack anything. He always wants us to have abundance. You know? But what we're seeing here is, as Zakan stated, contrasting situation or contrasting reality where you don't even have enough. It's scarce, it's sparse, it's barely able to carry you through. It's just to really see who can survive. It's like survival of the fittest.
Survival of the fittest.
And I suppose in times to come, when the system tries to limit resources, if you don't follow a particular pattern and take a particular mark, it will be a time of survival. We strongly believe the Most High will provide for His own somehow. And it's also going to be a time when those who are also used to fasting will still be able to survive, because you would have also trained yourself to restrain from eating for particular periods of time. So if you're caught in a situation, for example, where you are locked down and all you're given is abominable food. Do you remember when Daniel said, we're not going to eat this?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, you know what? We don't want all these delicacies that you claim to. Don't eat this stuff. So imagine being locked up in a situation where system is taking to you some pork. There's another situation in was it the book of Maccabees or was it Jubilee, where there's this woman with her sons, her banim, and the sovereign of the time wanted them to eat pork. Maccabees. And they decided, we do not eat these things. And the sovereign was saying to the Amma, tell your sons to eat it. And in Maccabees we read where she only spoke to them in the Abrith language, telling them, hold out. You know we don't eat this stuff. Even if we die, we're not going to bow out and eat this thing. How many persons, when hunger really strikes, will be able to hold out if that should happen anytime soon? Mm-hmm. Something to think about. And with how the world is going now, with the processing of food and injecting abominable things in all this food. I mean, baked products and processed products, and there's abomination. I mean, you're looking at, you want to eat fruits, but they put it in boiled pork bones and call it jello or whatever they call that thing. Who would have thought of putting fruits with pork? And telling you to give it to your children.
I say it's healthy.
You know, so, I mean, we have entered really, as scripture would say, perilous times. And I know a number of Abrim can relate to going into the supermarket and spending longer than a lot of other people because you have to be reading every label. And when you see strange words, you have to go on the internet. What is this? So, I mean, it's that severe now. And most especially for those who do not have the forces to plant food. That is the ideal, to be able to at least plant your food. Whether it is if you have land space or in pots or pans or so, or greenhouses if you have that. But if not, it requires a lot of investigation into what is being given to us to consume, because we consume a particular type of diet. We have a particular type of diet as a nation. Whilst other nations, we can't tell them what to eat. We were given specific instructions to govern us. So it's not for everyone. It's for our nation.
Right.
So verse 11. And drink water by measure, 1/6 of a hin to be drunk from time to time. So 6 of an hin, approximately 1 pint, or 1 pint, or
half a liter. Half a liter.
Half a liter. This small measure of water underscores the dehydration and suffering during a siege.
That's like 2 cups of water, or 2 cups and a little bit of water.
Wow.
From time to time. So it's not as though it's not as though it's promised that you'll get it every yum either.
This dependence availability.
Or was provision of it. Which means even in the siege, the people of Babel may have mocked them and sometimes starved them, sometimes didn't take water to them. Are you understanding? It's similar to someone who was probably imprisoned, and maybe to teach them a lesson. The guards decide they're not going to take anything for you to eat tomorrow, or not going to take anything for you to drink. You know, so from time to time, half a liter of water from time to time.
Wow. So rationing water. So reflects.
Oh, did you finish 6 of a hint? Okay.
So reflects the
dire
situation foretold in other scriptures, such as in Lamentation 5, verse 4. I'm going to ask someone to read it for us. Where water must be bought at a great price. So I'm going to ask someone to read Lamentation for us, chapter 5, verse 4.
We had to pay.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
We had to pay for our drinking water, and our wood comes at a price.
So
and that's what's happening now, isn't it?
Fine.
You have to pay for drinking water at a price, because a lot of the water in the general system is polluted. And again, as we said earlier, there are some places where people have to walk for miles to actually get drinking water. So this explains the high levels of dehydration, which the people at the time of the Most High were told they would experience, and suffering from thirst, but is also present now, where a lot of people who really should be following the instructions of the Most High, but instead choose to depend on man to provide, or themselves, find that they keep lacking. There's just never enough. You always in want, always in want. We see this parallel also in Kazun, where the water became bitter and as blood. Do we recall that? And so there would be scarcity of water even in the time. It is there now and in the times to come. So the bitter water is speaking of polluted water. Remember, those seals will intensify. So they open and they intensify with the passing of time. And so we've already begun to see where in a number of countries you cannot drink the regular water in the system because it is polluted, or it is heavily toxic with chemicals. So you find you have to be resorting to purchasing a lot of water, with the exception of persons who probably live near a river that is not close to a factory. You find in most other cases a lot of people having to purchase water. Well, we're in Jamaica, and we still have this situation where people who do not live in particular places purchase, but it is not as bad as the United States, because the water here, even in the pipes, is still consumable to an extent, though they do put chemicals in some of it. But during the short times that we visited the United States, we had to purchase a lot of water. We could not drink the water from the pipe. Here, at least at this time in Jamaica, even if you can't purchase it, there's, you're still able to drink it. Though in some places, especially the cities, it's heavily chlorinated. So people opt to purchase mostly. But when you go to the more rural sections, people are able to drink because it's rainwater that they harvest and drink. But in the United States, for the little experiences we had, you people have to purchase a lot of water. Which is really so bad. Even the rainwater in some places they're afraid in America to catch because there are certain toxins in the air that may somehow affect the water. Wow. So Yahuwah's word is true. Yahuwah's word is true.
So specific times mirrors the regulated, constrained taiyah for people under siege, unable to act freely, as was mentioned by Mora earlier about time.
So in essence, the system dictates what you eat, when you eat. So it was in Babel of that time, and so it is now in modern times, Babel or Babylon. System dictates.
So verse 12, and eat it as a barley cake, and bake it before their eyes on human dung. So barley bread. In Hebrew culture, barley was associated with the lowly. We read it from Shatatim 7, verse 30, and Yahuchanan 6, verse 9. It contrasts with the wheat bread, a symbol of prosperity. A human excrement for fuel. This represents uncleanness, and defilement. Now in Adabarim 23, verse 12 to 14, I'm going to ask someone to read it for us. Anyone?
And you shall have a place outside the camp where you shall go out, and you shall have a sharp implement among your equipment. And when you sit down outside, you shall dig with it and turn and cover your excrement. For Yahuwah your Elohim walks in the midst of your camp to deliver you and give your enemies over to you. Therefore your camp shall be Kodash, so that he does not see unclean matter among you, and shall turn away from you.
Hold up, read it.
We were chuckling because before we saw this scripture, whenever we would go into particular areas that were outside of what some would call civilization, so you go into forestry areas or so, and we had to go, we found that once we went, we always tried to cover it. Even though this is not a populated area, we found ourselves covering it. So when we saw this scripture which says, once you go out and you do that, cover it, because it's the area is defiled. You shouldn't have this opened up. Cover this. It brought back memories of when we did that, and we were wondering, why would we do that if this is not somewhere that people frequently visit? But it became a part of us to constantly cover it if we had to go, wouldn't leave it open. So here it is again, Yahuwah is saying, if you do that, cover it.
So baking.
So imagine having to cook over it. Yuck.
That's not too.
That's nasty.
Wow. So baking bread in this manner was meant to shock and highlight the degradation that wrongs had brought upon the people. So public act. The act being performed in the sight of the people demonstrates Yachazaq'al's role as a prophetic sign. We can read Yeshayahu 8, verse 18. Can I ask someone to do that for us?
Look, I, the Yaladim, who Yahweh has given me, for signs or wonders in Yasha'al from Yahweh of Zebul, who dwells in Har Zion.
Hold up for reading.
Sight of the people.
So verse 30. And Yahuwah said, even so the children of Israel shall eat their defiled bread among the nations, to whom I drive them. So defiled food. Eating unclean food symbolizes Israel's spiritual defilement and separation from Yahuwah due to their crimes. Now this aligns with Isaiah 9 verse 3, where Israel is warned they will eat unclean food in exile. So someone please read Isaiah 9 verse 3.
They shall not dwell in the land of Yahuwah, but Ephraim shall return to Matzarim and eat uncleanness in Asher.
So the for reading.
And that's happening now. Remember we talk about what they're injecting in all the foods. Mitzrayim or Egypt is not a place, it's a system now. So for those who hold that a particular country is the only place of Mitzrayim or modern Egypt, no, it's a system. Remember, Yahuwah has scattered his people. We weren't all scattered in the same country. And so if we are scattered back into Egypt or Mitzrayim, it means we're scattered into a system that operates like Mitzrayim. And this system covers the territories to which we have been scattered. Are you with me? So it's more than one particular country. It's only that one country is constantly on your television or television. But there are other countries that operate in the same or a similar way to Mitzrayim. And the food, remember with trade now modernized, you find that food from unclean food, that is, or tampered with food, is easier to be imported and exported. So the food is traveling across territories. And so some of these processed snacks and processed meats and foods and so on that have injected other unclean things in them, that is what is cheaper or more affordable and available in larger quantities for people to eat. And so, unfortunately, our people get caught in that, where things are being consumed which really are not for us. But when you look at it in the ruach, or the sense of the spiritual aspect of things, a lot of our people are sitting in congregations consuming unclean food in the form of messages that go against Torah.
And just to add, when I don't know if you have when I was out in Exianity at the time, and having members, knowing people in that same belief, and they visit the doctor, if you realize what the doctor tell them to stop eat, or what they mostly consume, some of them that I have known, is the unclean stuff that is affecting their health.
Oh, that's the physical stuff.
The physical, yeah, I was talking about the physical stuff.
Right, right.
So among the nations, a fulfillment of the curses in Adabarim 28, verse 64, where disobedience leads to dispersion and humiliation. And we read it earlier. So verse 14. Then I said, sovereign Yahuwah, see, I have never defiled myself from my youth till now. I have never eaten what died of itself or was torn by a beast, nor has unclean meat ever come into my mouth. Now here we see Yachazaq'al protest, reflects the Abrig commitment to covenant purity.
Spoken of in Kara 11. The different animals, clean and unclean.
Clean and unclean, different animals, yeah. Khan. So Yachazaq'al, as a Kahan, a priest, in Yachazaq'al chapter 1, verse 3, was especially mindful of dietary laws. So
the statement, not so sovereign Yahuwah.
This phrase in Hebrew, Abrid, reflects deep respect for Yahuwah while expressing a plea for mercy. Similar to Kafar response in Acts Mahasim 10, verse 14. I'm going to ask someone to read it for us.
But Kepha said, not at all, sovereign Yahuwah, because I have never eaten whatever is common or unclean.
Khan, to the forbidden. Personal purity highlights Yachazaq'al as a loyal representative of the remnant, contrasting with the defilement of the nation. So verse 15, and he said to me, see, I'm giving you the dung of cattle instead of human dung, and you shall prepare your bread over it. Now, cow dung, though unclean by priestly standard, it was culturally accepted as fuel in many parts of the Asian Near East. This concession shows Yahuwah's acknowledgement of Yachazaq'al purity while maintaining the symbolic message.
And I expounded on this earlier where, for some other territories, among some other nations in that time, it was common for them whenever they didn't have other forms of fuel to use cow dung. And it's still done now in some parts of the Arabs.
Alright. So, Yahuwah's mercy. Even in right ruling, Yahuwah responds to the pleas of his loyal servants, reflecting his compassion. And someone can read Shamut 34, verse 6, or Exodus 34, verse 6.
For
And
Yahweh before
Go
him,
ahead.
and for Yahweh, and all compassionate and showing favor, patient and great in kindness, truth.
So verse 16, and he said to me, Son of man, see, I'm going to cut off the supply of bread in Jerusalem, and they shall eat bread by weights and with fear, and drink water by measure and with dread. Now, cut off supply reflects the covenant kalalut, or curses, in Ulkara 26, or Leviticus 26, verse 26, that we read earlier, where disobedience leads to famine and scarcity, anxiety, and despair. Now, in our bread, these terms suggest deep psychological and spiritual suffering, reflecting the total breakdown of security and well-being. And we can read Yeshayahu 33, verse 14.
Sinners in Sion shall be afraid, trembling shall grip the defiled ones. Who of us shall dwell with the devouring fire? Who of us shall dwell with everlasting burnings?
So now, for reading. Prophetic accuracy. This prophecy was fulfilled during the Babylonian siege, as described in 2nd Malachi 25, verses 1 to 3, which we read earlier, and Lamentation 4, verses 10. Verse 10. We did read that also earlier. The final verse. So that they lack bread and water, and she shall be appalled with one another, and be consumed in their crookedness. Now, scarcity of food and water represent not only physical right ruling, but also spiritual famine. Now we're going to take a look at Amos 8, verses 11. Verse 11.
See, days are coming, declares the rash Yahweh, that I shall send a hunger in the land, not a hunger for bread, nor a thirst for water, but for hearing the devar of Yahuwah.
So now, we're reading.
So there shall be scarcity of the food of the word. And water usually represents the ruach of the Most High, or the presence of the Most High. So you're talking about scarcity of the truth of the word and scarcity of the presence of the Most High.
Mm.
And notice we said the truth of the word, because there will be other words.
Right.
But the truth will be scarce. And we already see where there is currently an abundance of other doctrines. But the truth is not as widespread currently. Religious dogma is even greater at this time than the spread of truth.
Appalled at each other reflects the moral and relational breakdown in times of desperation, where people turn against each other. Adabarim, or Deuteronomy 28, verse 53, verses 53 to 57. Can someone read it for us?
And you shall eat the fruit of your own body, the flesh of your sons and your daughters, whom Yahuwah your Elohim has given you, in the siege and distress in which your enemies distress you. The man among you who is tender and who is very delicate, his eye is evil against his brother, against the wife of his bosom, and against the rest of his children whom he leaves behind, against giving any of them the flesh of his children that he eats, because it is all that he has been left to him in a siege and distress with which your enemy distresses you in all your gates. The tender and a delicate woman among you, who have not tried to put the sole of her foot on the ground because of her delicateness and tenderness. Her eye is evil against the husband of her bosom, and against her son, and against her daughter, and against her seed which comes out from between her legs, and her children whom she bears. For she eats them in secret for lack of all, in a siege and distress with which your enemy distresses you in all your gates. If you do not guard to do all the words of this Torah that was written in this book, to revere this esteemed and awesome name, Yahuwah your Elohim.
For reading. So I'm gonna ask a few just to explain what you understand from what you just read from Adabarim 28 verses 53 to 57. The floor is open.
All at each other.
Anyone?
Sounds like desperation.
Not sure if they're speaking. Is someone speaking? Heard
I was
something.
saying that it sounds like desperation.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have any other choice.
People turning against each other because they're desperate. People cutting down even their very children, their parents, their spouses, out of desperation.
So this is literal, it's not metaphorical?
It's both.
It's both. It's being in survival mode. That's what's happening right there.
What is happening now too, and what is to come and get worse.
Mm-hmm.
We do see people turning against each other to survive. We do see people stabbing others in the back to survive, selling others out to survive. We see people prostituting their children
Just to survive.
to survive. We see that happening now. Trafficking their very own flesh and blood and dam to survive. That is happening now. It comes on the news, you see it in the papers. It happens, and unfortunately, it will get worse. We see people who will unfortunately get rid of the very children in their womb for the sake of human rights.
Mm-hmm.
That is my choice. And
Freedom.
they will claim that this chai in the womb is not a person. I'm sure it's not a plant. And so they'll tell you that at a certain time in the womb, it's not yet a person. It was a person from before it was even conceived. But we see now that people, even our own people, will get involved in these activities. There are cannibals as well that exist. There are people who drink dam to make Rasha covenants or Rasha Barith. And for some of them, they will unfortunately give up their own people for the sake of fame and wealth. Are you with me? So appalled at each other because of the siege that is against our people. I saw a video where someone who was supposed to be a chef presented dishes for the judges to, it's a competition of some sort with food. And I don't remember the name of it. It was an excerpt that I saw. I don't know the show, but it was shared with me. And the judges were to guess what the meat was. And unfortunately, nobody could guess what it was. And the chef, when he was asked what it was, said it was a mixture of human flesh. Of course, one of the judges was livid, understandably so, but to him, it was okay. I mean, it's happening. It's happening. We may not see it coming in the mainstream a lot, but these things happen. These things happen. Some people who we can't find, we just have to pray. But people will even dismember other people for the sake of their organs.
That's even happening now.
Yeah.
That much.
Continue.
Race away. A phrase used in covenant Kalalu to describe the ultimate consequence of persistent rebellion. Mut and Katab. We can read in Wilkara, Leviticus 26, verse 39. I also want to read it first.
Whilst they're finding that, we already know that we're told the wages of our crimes is moot. Yahuwah did say, to the territories you're being scattered, you're going to be destroyed. A lot of you are going to be destroyed. And unfortunately, a lot of our people have been cut down through violent means. and through other means, because as a nation we strayed away from the Most High. Wikara 26:39.
And those of you who are left rot away in their wickedness in your enemies' lands, and also in their fathers' wickednesses rot away with them.
Good up for reading.
Good up for reading.
Good up for reading. Wow, what a chapter that really shakes you. Each chapter so far has really brought with it its own series of events and warnings, and from preparation to demonstration, well, from the call to the preparation to the demonstration, and it continues, and it gets even deeper as we go through the remaining chapters of Yachazaq'al.
All right, so we're going to take a 10-minute break just to refresh, grab something, use the restroom if necessary, and then be back.
All right. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. We are back. Is everyone back?
Fine.
Fine.
Yakhazaq'al.
Yakhazaq'al.
All right, so historical findings or archaeological findings, we see where through the records of historians and those who would have conducted various forms of excavations in different territories, really, some locations are a bit questionable. Nevertheless, what they say is that all that was conducted in Jerusalem, such as in the city of Dawood, have uncovered layers of ash, broken pottery, and Babylonian arrowheads dating back to the destruction in 586 BCE, which means the findings corroborate scripture. They corroborate Yachazaq'al's prophecies. In the Babylonian Chronicles, the records of Babel or Babylon align with the scriptural account of Nebuchadnezzar's siege of Jerusalem. Clay tablets similar to Yachazaq'al's symbolic act, inscribed with warnings or records, as we indicated earlier, were common in those territories. It was common for you to find clay tablets with various inscriptions or records from different nations.
So, theological insights. Number one, covenant loyalty. Now, Yachazaq'al action demonstrate the severity of breaking Yahuwah's covenant. And we see in part of it in Wikara 26 that we read earlier, but you can read it in your spare time, and Akhad Ahabah 28, which is Deuteronomy 28. Number two, hope beyond right ruling. Though Yachazaq'al prophecies are grave, the broader message of this book includes restoration and renewal.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Yahuwah.
And of course, you'll see that as we get to chapter 36, verses 24 to 28. I don't know if you want anyone to read that.
Someone can read it. Someone can go ahead and read it first. Anyone? So Yachazaq'al 36, verses 24 to 28.
36, 24, 28.
28.
And I shall take you from among the Gentiles, or the Goyim, and I shall gather you out of all the nations, out of all the lands, and I shall bring you into your own land, Yahuwah. And I shall sprinkle clean water on you, and you shall be clean from all your filthiness, and from all your mighty ones I cleanse you. And I shall give you a new labab, and place a new rook within you. And I shall take the labab of stone out of your flesh, and I shall give you a labab of flesh, and place my ruach within you. And I shall cause you to walk in my instructions and guard my right rulings, and shall do them. 28. And you shall dwell in the land that I gave to your Abim, and you shall be my people, and I shall be your Elohim. Yada Yahuwah.
Yahuwah.
Relevance in Hebraic perspective. Prophetic drama. Yachazaq'al embodies the abridged concept of Nabim, prophets, as spokesmen who often use physical action to convey spiritual truths. Corporate accountability. The emphasis on communal wrongdoing reflects the Hebraic understanding of collective responsibility. In Yahusha ben Nun, Joshua 7, verse 1.
You see a correlation.
Can someone read it first?
But the Yaladim of Yashral committed a trespass regarding that is under the ban. For Achan, ban of Carmi, ban of Zabdi, ban of Zerach, of the tribe of Yehuda, took of that is under the ban. For the displeasure of Yahweh burned against the Yaladim of Yashral.
So we saw the entire nation suffering because of one man's action.
Connection to exile. Yachazaq'al prophecies are deeply rooted in the Torah, particularly the consequences of failing to adhere to the covenant. According to Ulkara, Leviticus 26, verse 33, and Adabarim 28, verse 64, which we read earlier. So, in closing, Yachazaq'al 4, or chapter 4, demonstrate Yahuwah's right ruling and the consequences of rebellion. Now, the chapter is rich in symbolism and deeply rooted in Torah's warning. Historic findings affirm its accuracy, while parallel scripture reinforce the themes of right ruling and covenant. Ultimately, Yachazaq'al prophecies point to the necessity of a return or shub to covenant and the hope of restoration. Yada Yahuwah.
Yada Yahuwah.
Yahuwah.
Yada Yahuwah.
So we're going to repeat Talaim 119, verses 17 to 24, the Gam, or some people say the Gamal. After 2, Akhad Shatim.
Gamal with your servant. Let me live and I guard your word. Gal my eyes that I might see wonders from your Torah. Gar I am in the Arats. Do not hide your commands from me. Garsa is my being with longing for your right rulings at all times. Gara, you, the proud, curse ones who are straying from your commands. Gal for me reproach and scorn, for I have observed your witnesses. Gam, though princes start speaking against me, your servant meditates on your
statutes.
Your witnesses are my delight, my counselor. Yada Yahuwah. Rumama Yahuwah.
Mama.
It's time for another praise and thanksgiving.
Yada Yahuwah.
Yada Yahuwah.
Yada Yahuwah. Mama Yahuwah, Yahuwah, yeah. Yahuwah reigns. Yahuwah reigns. Yahuwah reigns. Oh, he reigns above every name. Yahuwah reigns. Yahuwah reigns. He reigns above every name. With power and majesty over all authority you reign. With power and majesty over all authority you reign. Take it higher, Yahuwah reigns. Yahuwah reigns. He reigns above every name and everything. Yahuwah reigns. Yahuwah reigns. Oh, he reigns above every name. With power and majesty over all authority you reign. Yahuwah, you reign. With power and majesty over all authority you reign. Even higher, Yahuwah reigns. Yahuwah reigns. He reigns above every name and everything. Yahuwah reigns. Yahuwah reigns. He reigns above every name. With power and majesty over all authority you reign. Somebody tell him that he reigns. Power and majesty over every authority you reign. Yahuwah reigns. giving me another chance. You reign over my cares and every fear, over my circumstance, giving me another chance. You reign. Yahuwah reigns over my circumstance, giving me another chance. You reign. Yahuwah, you reign, reigning over my circumstance, giving me another chance. Say you reign, you reign, you reign, reigning over all my cares. You reign over my children, reign over my family, reign over this nation. Yahuwah reign, you reign, you reign over the Shama'im and Ha'arats. You reign, you reign, you reign. Yada Yahuwah, you reign, you reign. You still reign. Rumama Yahuwah.
Hallelujah.
Yahuwah.
Mama.
Yada Yahuwah. Even the dog just did something. Let everything that has breath praise Yahuwah.
Hallelujah.
Yahuwah.
Yahuwah.
Hallelujah. Yahuwah.
We are the Natsarim of Yahuwah.
And of course, we say Akhad
Ahabah,
which means
one love.
And we thank all our viewers and subscribers, all the family of the Most High, for viewing today's presentation.